Hi everyone. Today I have decided to bring to you uh, a lot of evocative material that would definitely be something to think about, material that I've been working on for quite a few months, and so it may have overlapped with the last videos that I've made on my channel, the Promethean. And most of my work, as you know, I've given myself notes to stick to, but it doesn't mean that I'm going to be reading it to you like a lecture. I do want to bring across to you some very important things to think about. And it's about the realm in which we exist within. So we live in a realm that is basically based on influences and that it's relevant to forming and shaping the world, thoughts, projections, magical thinking, sigils, signs, impressions, and these things are also usually perverted. So there's just not one thing that if you do the research that you'll discover has not been tampered with or has not been interfered with. There's a lot of things. There are a lot of things that have been interfered with, labeled and mislabeled, etc. So the most important factor to consider is how do you navigate around that shit, and how do you use your inherent gifts or your psychic abilities in terms of navigating through this war, mind war, inside of this dome, this thunder dome, which is a play on words of the realm in which we live within. And so I start off by explaining to you that we could look at your psychic abilities as psycho-kinetic powers or vril. I'm going to use that word. The reason I chose that word is so that you will understand that we're looking at something that's quite serious. I'm calling it vril because it is psychokinetic powers that is within you. But it relates itself to the mechanics of thinking. And so psychic powers, for example, clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience, the ability to love, to express, to think, to feel, to create, to reason, to rationalize, even influence and project, to feel, to visualize, to sense, and even to traverse interdimensionally as well as astrally, extra dimensionally within this realm or out of the system overlay or realm, the power to alchemize, to change frequencies, to think and to reason, to meld it all into one being within the human form. That is now to say, if you're aware of it. And so these abilities are personal to you, internally and aligned to that which is around you. There's a reason why I've decided to kick off with the thinking process, because you gotta have to get the thinking straight in order for you to understand how to navigate in this map. So these abilities are personal, internal, and aligned to that which is around you. However, these abilities have also been exploited and used to control and interfere with the common man and his or her journey, your life processes, your thought engineering, not only through physical manipulation or ideas, through social engineering, but also mental, spiritual, and emotional engineering. You just need to look at the millions and millions of secret societies, agencies, those that work in the covert, dark, occult, cult behaviors, and see how they play roles to change and shape the mind of man. And so thinking is also be controlled, such as mind control, which you're aware of. However, the type of mind control that I'm referring to is the mind control that is referenced in material written by a guy called Michael Aquino. He's died now, who was a Satanist. And he was also involved in military, the United States military. And he says in his works here, and I'll cite from it, that it's vital to focus on the thought architecture at times of political changes, so that it becomes possible to influence people's belief systems during periods of crisis or political events. He says that people tend to believe that they think independently from one another, and so that there is a belief of individualism. Well, we know that it's not true, but that's what he would say in his work, because he's presenting an idea of how to think and teaching people how to use his skills. So he says when crisis happens, people tend to gather together and become a collective. This is just common sense and common observation in terms of how human behavior happens. We know that what he says is not exactly true, like I've just said, but he says that there is a working that takes place for the greater good. And this is because smaller groups are created to create an illusion of democracy for people to believe in, so that it would appear almost as if you're looking at vending machines or vendors, which would propagate some sort of clue or an idealist belief system for that person to believe in. I mean, look how many millions of people there are that are forming these little groups and bands to present a certain ideology in where they stand with regards to what happens. And so this is when certain groups are created so that it can be addressing, so that it can create the collective needs, like I've just explained. And so under the false sense of democracy, any ideals, he writes, quote, "From peanut butter to war, these perceptions are guided subtly, pressed directly, and reinforced socially. By the time the masses are permitted to vote, the parameters of their votes have already been predetermined with only tokenistic variations. In the outcome possible, weaving ethics, ideas, and responsibilities to exercise only the highest and most rigorous values of human individuality and dignity." And this is, of course, perceived ideals. So during times of crisis, the mind war tends to overwhelm any existing mundane behavior, dictating systems, replacing the mind war with a more sophisticated, comprehensive, and effective package of ideas. In other words, in brackets here, he says humans are normally both ignorant of and unconcerned with how their thoughts originate and are structured. And so this explains the interface between the consciousness, or alternate the mind, and the physical senses, which is the body mechanisms, received disturbances from and changes within the objective universe. And he refers to the brain as being able to pick up electromagnetic pulses through chemical information in the machine of the mind. That is how he speaks, how he refers to the mental thinking process. And so he also refers here to that the mental capacity would then receive raw sensory data and would not know how to deal with it, whether they should be able to dismiss it, which is what most people would probably do with information that they don't understand, or they would take to it as if they're hypnotized and they're magnetized to that specific belief system already pre set in place. And this was done through psycho-kinetic mental magic energy projected into the collective. And so these results, or the result in terms of the deliberate decision making and also in assignment of the input, an existing new pattern is placed in the mind to think on. In other words, what he's saying is that based on looking at the variables in how people think on a psychological level, manipulating the social media and the social norm can magically be created so that it can be done through psychokinetic impulses projected to the masses, so that they will be able to believe that they can behave in a certain way. In other words, he says here, Mind War, which is the book that I've taken this excerpt from, is a manual for practical applications in the objective universe, so concentrates on the identification and control of pattern and algorithmic thought, because he refers to your thought as a computer. So it picks up on algorithms. And not to say that the word Algol really means a third star in the Perseus system, to put it like that. So there's some sort of aspect in terms of that as well, which relates to the demon element, which we'll discuss much later. And so Aquino also referred to the thinking process within the mind and its perceptions as subjected to either things or ideas that come from the objective universe or the subjective universe. So through psychokinetic projection mentally, mind control can be done by way of focusing on the consciousness of humanity collectively and projecting it into thoughts for preconceived behavioral patterns and ideas. So, which really begs to ask, how powerful are your thoughts actually? And so I decided to use that as a stepping stone. I'm not supporting Michael Aquino's work. I gathered the information and I present it to you, and so we will look at this going further. If a Satanist observes and explains how the thinking process works and what their involvement is in the background, then I think it's something that we need to take note of. And so thoughts essentially are electrical and determined, while intentions are magnetic. This has always been mentioned in my channel. I've always explained it in such a way. This is the metaphysical manner of thinking and investigating. Otherwise, you'll have no idea what you're looking at. And so all of these formulations, as based on the root form of the ability in which the currency of electrical impulses are charged ideas through magnetic intentions. Willpower, temper, emotional outbursts, expressions of love discharged within the exalted outward motion. In other words, in simple terms, what you're thinking, and if you're stressing about it, does come through your conscious thoughts and influences your dynamic around you. That's as simple as that. Thoughts understood deeply adhere to certain rules or criteria which is related to this realm in which you exist, in which the coherent frequency must be obtained with willpower and intention. So, same example again. You're hearing something that's very distressing. You stress about it all the time while you're thinking about it. It starts to churn, your heart rate starts to go up. You start to suspect things happening around you. You become suspicious of everything. And before you know it, it happens. That is how powerful your thoughts are. I am not negating that certain things and events that do happen, and that you did not have any forethought thinking of it. However, the majority of the thinking process in this realm is really related to mostly projection magic, whether you are aware of it or not, whether you are a Christian or not, whether you're a Satanist or not, whether you're an atheist or not, etc., etc., etc. It is important to understand the way that we think. Thoughts at all times have direct and indirect influence over your life and over others. Unless you work on certain things within you to better yourself, I would urge you to strive independent thinking and to utilize your internal alchemy. The deeper aspect is related to understanding and knowing that you are a spirit being. And of course, the information that I'm conveying on this channel here is for the people that are spirited beings, and I'm not speaking to demons. So we become an emotional being when we formulate our souls, and when we do so, to some degree, have the will to formulate our own capacity of thinking as well. Although I don't think it's happening so often anymore in terms of creating things as they come along, I still see the creative process taking place continuously. You can see it on an objective level. You become a thinking being, and then finally a physical being. So before you become physically in your form, you are already thinking, because your soul is formulating around you, around your spirit energy. I've spoken about this before on my videos. And so as a spirited man or a being, is also an energetic being. So you need to understand who you are in relation to everything else around you. First spirit, then soul, then thinking, then embodiment, and then existence. You determine how you exist, of course. All these energy layers are interconnected by energy threads, and they interact with each other and the realm dynamics within you and around you. So in other words, you're not as solid as you think either. You are affected by the dynamics of the forces of the energy around you. The energy is also known as luminiferous ether. I think I've brought it up before, but I'll go into more detail now. And so that means that which surrounds you and also to some degree makes up part of your physical vessel. And so the universe and its very fabric is etheric. Think of it as a sea of energy where everything is connected and influenced by one another. Only the brain displays the apparent separation of things or the interaction between things. And so you are a working, active embodiment. Your vessel and your spirit is within, while your soul is observing all the information gathering through your mind. And I think it was Nikola Tesla that said space. So I need to explain that people must not become confused with ether and space. Nikola Tesla explained that space has essentially no properties. It does have attributes like a shadow though. So it does, you can't see it that it has cold or heat either. A shadow is a property of what is absent. In other words, what is the shadow a property of? That light is projecting from a place of origin, and the shadow is formed by matter, by something that's in the way of the light that's projecting through. So the shadow that is cast from the light that is projecting against matter. Okay, that is how you need to understand when you look at shadows as well as ether. Ether is all of that in capacity. And so luminiferous ether is an attribute of that exact ether, of ether in itself. In other words, it's all around you. I don't want to cut through, details here, but perhaps it's important to explain it for those of us that will think on this. And so light is magnetic and electric. Therefore, it also moves within waves, sine waves, as in compression and decompression, compression and decompression. And in the same way, these energies are like threads that are also weaving through you. It's only possible for it to weave through you, to exist around you and within you, when you are aware of what you are and what you are experiencing around you, and to understand what ether is in the bigger picture. The next part of the information I want to share with you is something that is the evocative aspect. For us to consider the following part is that the world inside where you exist within is within a field of Taurus, the Taurus field. And the realm in which you live inside is basically the toroidal field or Taurus, because of its impact of energy, electromagnetic energy in unison. Its signature, its energy signature relates to what happens within. And so you're looking at electricity and magnetism in a very rudimentary way, as how I am explaining it. I don't want to go into too much detail. And you're looking at two forces essentially. Like Aquino said, subjective and objective universe, it's the same thing. So if they're seeing these things, I think it's important for those that have spirit to see it as well. Your life will be different after that one. And you're also looking at the two faces of God, or Janus, as it's been harped on for almost eternity, that fold along each other and creates bands of power that continuously implodes and explodes, or compresses and decompresses, or in the same manner you observe as you breathe in and you breathe out. the same process, in and out. Heart beats and in and out, the same way. The system overlay is inside of the torus, and the system overlay forms part of the protective layer for beliefs, specifically, and for creation. It is also crystal, like in its formation, and you'll see later when I show it to you on diagram. And since the torus operates as a type of movie projector, that's how you could look at it, it needs a lens to project the image into where you are. And so when you look at the image that I've posted here now, the image of the torus is the model of Marco Rodin, his toroidal coil, which I found to be a very accurate description of how forces operate from what I've also observed. So you're looking at the Rodin coil, which is Marco Rodin's model, and his model is the most accurate in describing how the energy works. As I'm looking at it right now, I'm explaining to you, you will see that the coil operates from an compression and decompression in from the top and out from the bottom. You'll also see luminiferous light penetrating through those little tiles on the ring, as well as an area which I've colored in black and white so that you can see that that is the Masonic tracing board pattern which is being used. So the enemy knows a lot more than you think. That's why I want you to start getting to know things. And then I've taken one of those tiles and I've highlighted it into much more clear so that you can see that if you take the tile in itself, it really is also a dodecahedron, which is a diamond from one dimension, and when you look at it from another dimension, you'll see a hypercube. So it's the same thing, it's just in the variations of in which the light spins through the band or the body of the torus. So within the torus is a field of the system overlay. Within the torus itself are plates that are cubic or dodecahedron or a hypercube, as I've just explained, and it just depends in how you look at it and in what way you look at it. But looking from above, it gives the appearance of a diamond or a trapezoid. And so every plate that you need to understand is a holographic positive. And that word comes from Ken Wheeler. And I will cite from the people that I have used information from because that is the right thing to do. This means that every part or plate within the skin of the torus receives and records light from the entirety of the object or an object. Underneath the torus skin, the underbelly or the serpent is the system overlay or the interference logos, also cited from Ken Wheeler in explaining it. Your current life within these aspects are divided into two parts, metaphysical and material. And it's always going to be challenging you. Just as the first rendition of God, of the God system, which was once called Odin, the one eye, because from the top down the torus has only one entrance, whereas the other eye was forfeited, which is perhaps at the bottom, because it is open from the top and the bottom. Then it's changed its value every age to something else. Then its name changed to Thor. With every age came a collapse of that age, and with every age came a new god or a new aeon. But it's still a torus. It's never changed in any other way. The mechanism, the machine, the instrument is precisely exactly the same thing, except people keep giving it new names and new belief systems and new ideologies and new religions. And so the information keeps being recorded in these tiles. And so when you look at it, it is electrical. I think Thor or Torus is probably the closest that would probably mean to explain this thing, since it uses electrical pulse from the people inside of the center. Okay, and then there was also Yahweh, the warrior god of thunderstorms. Did you know that it was the thunderstorm god? And prior to that thing was called Baal, which is just another god name for the mechanism in which you exist in. There is, however, one and only original formless one, which was and always and ever shall be, and that is my personal connection, which I feel, and perhaps yours, which I call Great Spirit. And that is beyond this mechanism. Just because you're inside of the box doesn't mean that someone put you there. You got trapped in there because of the way that the system operates. The original creator didn't put you in there. The original creator seeded connection energy from within you, and you had to navigate by yourself. Which is why I can understand why people feel not happy. People don't feel happy. I don't feel happy. It just is what it is. I mean, we're needing to deal with how to function in this thing. The hypercube, the plates inside of the skin of the Taurus, which I've also referred to the snake skin because it does look like a snake skin when all of these millions and millions of really fast spinning little trapezoids go past you, is really a very good example of that as well. It's the most fixated thing that people fixate on. They fixate on the interfered and interfere with it. Blood has been spilled for it and within it. Spells have been woven into it. Religious wars have been crafted with it. And conflict and high magic wizards refer to this as the cube or the switchboard. One of these tiles, okay? One of these little tiles is all of that. So what I'm trying to explain to you is the capacity to understand the entirety of this thing is enormous, and I would advise you to please listen to it again. Now I've got another example here. It's called the gherkin, and that is pretty much, if you had to spread it out, that would be exactly what you're looking at, which will show you the egg in which the Taurus is within. And the skin around it has been used. And I'll explain it a little bit deeper as we go along. And here is an image of the switchboard, which is also used and often being used as the understanding of the Akashic records. And so, nonetheless, it's only the representation of the whole. The same thing. Every time, the same coconut, over and over and over. The universe is thus not a simulation in itself, but simulated within the system overlay, which is interference logos, cited from Ken Wheeler, while the Torus is the engine for the program to run. It is also not quantum mechanics because the word quantum means measurement. Okay, so it's like calling something, it's like worshipping the kilogram, the word kilogram. So in the novel Mount Analog by French author René Daumal, he wrote about an epic story of a man who was looking for the elusive mountain when only certain elites would travel to, the breakaway society or the cargo cults, as they often are. The guys that launch to Mars that just never get there, and so on. He describes the mountain as an Allen log representation of a portal or something that shines like a diamond. And so it tells us that he is essentially referring to one of those trapezoids that could very well be a diamond as well. And so now I'm going to explain things in a little bit deeper in terms of the torus itself. And so the torus must be understood as the terrestrial sphere that was made of 4 elements, namely earth, air, fire, and water. Subject to change and decay. It always is because it is a closed system. The celestial spheres outside or inside of the torus were illuminated by the luminiferous ether or light penetrating through the plates of the torus. Light that comes into the plate splits the beam of light and depicts the most wondrous or the most disastrous image or patterns of belief. Languages such as hieroglyphics could also be conjured from these plates. Hebrew language, Ruin language, any language that you can think of, including this name of this entity, which I'll show you here, is exactly the same thing. So nature is the physical attribute of the metaphysical. Just like your soul is and your physical form is the physical attribute of your spirit, which is metaphysical. That's how you need to understand it. And the beauty of it, or the destruction of it, nature simulates itself and is within the system overlay. So it requires the system overlay to keep it going. You need to have seasons, you need to have regular celestial movements so that there's an ongoing process. It keeps moving. And so this is why I'm saying nature simulates itself, because if you plant a seed, the same plant will come from the ground after you've removed it from its fruit, the same shape or the same look. And so it replicates itself. Doesn't mean there's no intelligence in it, there is, but it is a different sort of frequency to understand, and this is going to take us for a long time if I have to go into those details. Nature simulates itself and is within the system overlay, and it is part of it through the same patterns of the plate of the torus. Thus, system overlay is the fractal of self-similarity, which means it's the thing that cuts the laser or bends the laser, the light to come through. That's how you need to look at it. It's the lens. It's a lens inside of the torus. Okay, and that is the system overlay. I've heard people asking me, what is the difference? The torus is the field around you, and the system overlay is a field around you, but both interact with one another. And I'll show you in the diagram and you'll understand it better. You're looking at rings within rings. You're looking at the Russian doll scenario. In terms of recognizing that the object is as if nothing has been removed. If you've removed the object out of the system overlay, there is still proof that the object has been there. So in other words, this is why people start to see things on an eidetic manner. In other words, you can see where the tree had grown after it got chopped off. The tree is still there. Its auric field is still there. It's because the tree was put there. And the system overlay keeps it programming, keeps it going there. The same thing takes place when you physiologically leave or pass over or die within the system, where your soul requires a great deal of energy to project itself out of the actual body itself that's decaying now, that you're putting down to the ground or putting down, and there's parts of that soul still left, like residual, and that is the same thing. However, the difference is you are able to retract that eidetic image or that soul imprint or that frequency of your residual presence or thumbprint. You can remove it eventually. It does go with you because it belongs to you. This is why I keep saying human race needs to start waking up to these things, to start becoming aware of who you are and what you are, that you're actually so much more stronger than you think. However, we will see how things go forward from here on now. And so timelines are curved as well. Timelines are not straight, they're curved. They go with the curve of the torus. It always is. It weaves. It's like inside of a weave. Timelines keep weaving around one another, and timelines are only there because of the relationship that the system overlay has with nature. Nature is a has got a shelf life to it. So therefore, time is related to nature, material, okay, because things decay. And so every time or every line that you make, or you make an impression, because I've used the magnetic drawing board as an example, think of it like that. Every line that you draw on that board can be wiped away. So, or left there for another person to continue on. So every line that you make on this board is an action or an impression within the realm. It's captured by a trapezoid lens and then projected into the system for people to experience. It depends on how strongly you were motivated to create that line. And so within the system, a holographic positive needs to be understood. Every part or plate within the skin of the torus receives and records light from the entirety of the object or an object. So you can imagine how many tiles there are to formulate this entire structure of image of where I'm sitting and talking to you from. The entire capacity of wherever I'm looking, I can see that it's worked itself together, because there's a tree, because the tree is there. Okay, and if the tree is chopped off, the impression of the tree will still be there. And so a gaze or a focus, a thought, an idea, a mental objectification, not subjection. Just keep that in mind, and I will discuss with you a little bit. I will discuss with you what subjection means later, determined by another's objectification. So in this instance, we need to understand, and I'll repeat it again, that a gaze or a focus, a thought or an idea, mental objectification, not subjection, because subjection is determined by another's objectification. So the objective is, there will be a great R, and you will be happy with nothing, and that is the object, and then you will be subjected to that, and you will just accept it and be happy about it. There's an example of that. This is why it's so important to understand the holographic image projection in itself, which relates to the field of the torus around the system overlay, which is the field around the place you live, the realm. Okay, which means it doesn't say that it is dome, round, square, flat, or any of these things. I'm merely explaining it to you in a metaphysical manner so that you understand how the entire operation works. Understand that, and you'll have the understanding of navigating through this place. And so it stays there, becomes something in the potential, always is potential, because this is how potent the power of the realm's magnetic and electric forces are. Always remember that we are spirit beings, and that we become an emotional being when we formulate, work along, and have the ability to co-create our soul to function to a degree to navigate through this place. You have a part to play in it, because you start to capture things as you grow up, and that shapes how your soul navigates through this world. So you co-create with whatever and whomever and in whatever way you did. Okay, so that can also explain to you if there were people that never gave love to their children, or never touched their heads, or never touched them, that they grew up lacking that. And that is another thing that we can look, that is something to think about as well. And so you become a thinking being, and then finally a physical being, and the simple process of human formation. And that is really the simplicity of it. You have a spirit which creates a spark through the intention of a soul. The soul learns and takes things in with the energy around it, and it starts to formulate. And then you become a thinking being, and then you become a physical being. Okay, that's the basic of it. And so I'm looking at Aristotle, where he described the outer ring as the fifth element, or an unchangeable ether. It is not unchangeable, it is a constant. Okay. I think the person that put the information down wrote it that way because that's how they thought. But it is a constant. A constant in motion is a constant. So if I move my hand like this, you'll see two hands or one hand or one finger. It depends. Okay. That is constant. So however we know it is changeable, like I've said, because of the constant motion of it means that it is also penetrative. Light can go through. But if light goes through this fan, you'll see something coming out of there depending on what you have in your thoughts. Okay, so that's the simplest, that's even more simpler put. Okay, elements have natural motions such as of earth and water tend to fall, which we know, and those of air and fire tend to rise, so the alchemy takes place. The speed of such motions depend on their weight and the density of the medium. Aristotle argued that a vacuum could not exist because the speed in which the interchanging or the changing or the of ether was taking place, so there is no vacuum outside, okay, of the torus. There is a vacuum, however, inside though. It is a closed system. So a lot of vacuous people too. So now I'm showing you the image of the torus and the study from Aristotle's works, which is the following image from a person called Peter Aspian's 1524 representation of the universe, which was heavily influenced by Aristotle's ideas, where he describes the terrestrial spheres of water and earth. So I will cite here the following from that drawing. So that the surrounding celestial spheres from inner to outer are those of the Moon, Mercury, Venus, Sun, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, each indicated by a planet symbol or sigil. That's what I would call that, sigils. The eighth sphere is the firmament of fixed stars, which include the visible constellations, which is why when I said to you their next intention in my last video was that the light bearing technology has now frozen the system overlay, it means exactly that. With a lot of technology they were able to freeze the system overlay so that it does not tick over to the next interval, which is naturally supposed to happen. However, we know that it can also backfire on them. So the precession of the equinoxes caused a gap between the visible and the notional division of the zodiac. So medieval Christian astronomers created a ninth sphere. This is where I actually think the Christian thing came in, because they call it the crystallinum, which is the system overlay, is what I've called it. Okay, and its essence is really like liquid crystal. It's moving at a slower pace than what is on the outside. Outside is faster, imploding, exploding, imploding, exploding, but also curved. If you look at that coil, and the system overlay inside is a constant. This is why you always see the moon on one side wherever you are. You will never see the moon actually change shape, change direction. Everything that you see is only just a constant because of the slowness in which the system overlay moves. Okay, that is my opinion and that is my observation. The next thing I would like to bring to your attention is the next example of what you're actually looking at in terms of how the system operates as well. Here we have the image of another extremely fascinating example called this is the strangler fig tree. Inside this tree is a hollow space where a different tree stood. I'm hoping you're able to see the capacity of this, of the enormity of what it looks like, and then I'll read to you what it says. The strangler fig's seeds have made their way into the canopy of a host tree and germinated. As the fig's roots grow, they cascade down the trunk. Once they are in the ground, it competes for nutrients and water with the host. Then it gradually tightens its grip around the host tree. This process hinders the flow of water and nutrients, causing the host tree to weaken and eventually die. Over time, the strangler fig takes over completely once the process is completed. The original tree decomposes, and a hollow center is all that remains to mark its former existence. And this is the example of what I'm trying to explain to you about the presence of the frequencies of them living here and what they're doing to the realm. And all those holes in the trunk is literally, I would explain it as the Taurus, as you're able to see through. So this is the example that I'm trying to explain to you, where you're needing to see this. This is a form of parasitism. Yeah. And so all heavenly bodies are projected through the lens of the plates within this realm. Existing life, as you know, is within the nature of your environment. It exists within the center core where the flux of energy flows. In and around the realm, in and around the realm, the arms or spire of the galactic core as you perceive it is also visible, depending on how you look at things. It is within the center point in which the realm is built within. And this is within the eye of the Tor, or Odin's eye. As I would call it that. It's just so much more apt. So now we're looking at luminiferous ether, because I've said to you there's light that comes through the Taurus field. So now what is this light? This is called luminiferous ether. And so that light is where it is when the ether touches the speeding, spinning of the implosion, explosion of the Taurus. So when it touches it, it's like creating a match and you light. And that light goes through, okay? And that light spins through that thing and it goes into the center. And everyone sees everything going on in the center there. And there's this comets and shit happening. And UFOs and aliens and ghosts and goblins and ghouls. These are all figments of light. Some of them are real. Some of them are people that have disincarnated, that have passed away, that have not been able to go out. Some of people have been trapped in serious magical stuff as well. Yeah. And so this light permeates or penetrates through the permeable skin of the Taurus around the realm or world. The planets or heavenly bodies, astrological markings or data, are merely sigils and forms of projected ideals and belief systems. The aeons, right? The 7 planets or the aeons, penetrating through a lens into this realm. And this movement of the dielectric frequencies operate within super fast pulse, like I've explained, in and outward constant. It's designed that way. And so the visible sun, because you're going to ask me about the sun, the yellow one, which became the white one, which is now becoming the blue one, because literally the sun is also changing color, depends on the people, okay, and also the decided ideas of prophecies and all stuff like that. The blue haziness around it becoming, because of the magnitude of the luminiferous ether that shines through it at different angles. The luminiferous ether originates from the hyper-Uranian or topos hyper-Uranios, which is placed beyond heaven, okay, which is also called Platonic realm. Sadly, that's a terrible name because that comes from Plato. And it is a place in heaven where all ideas or real things are collected together, which is just merely a lens, okay? And as a perfect realm of forms, the hyper-Uranian is within Plato's view that the idea of phenomenon is beyond the realm of real phenomena, and that everything we experience in our lives is merely a copy of a perfect model. Much like what I've just explained to you about the Taurus, which is really a projector that projector, that gives you the information, you just function in it, and that's it. Hey, bombs away, let's have popcorn. And that is just from a former life that you used to live in. Those things that you're finding, these mud fossil guys that are obsessed with these things, are looking at the former world. That's correct. However, the former world is still stacked in as part of the projection in the system overlay. So you're definitely going to see these things because those things existed from a former world, or the world that you lived in before. This place that Plato was talking about is where you may think is God. That is where it is. So as you can see, there's layers of realms that I've put together for you. You'll understand that when I explain to you that these realms are merely put that way so that you can see it from a one-dimensional perspective, as perspective, to understand. That part there is described as higher than the gods, since their divinity depended on the knowledge of the hyper-Uranian beings, which was perhaps once upon a time people that had existed prior to this. Perhaps we lived in our previous world where we were very wise to these things, and some of us may be hyper-Uranian beings. I'm just throwing that out there. And so the hyper-Uranian, later as a medieval concept, that claimed that God within the Empyrean existed outside of heaven and controls it as the prime mover from there for heaven even to be a part of the moved itself. So the hyper-Uranian is also synonymous to the preconceived understanding of the void. Okay. So we envisage a giant Taurus active within an existing realm, the sweet spot where life is constant, and this life as you know it is the realm which consists out of layers, and there's an interactive layer of within the realm that you interact with, and I want to say it's a layered cake inside of a shape of an egg that's charged. From above the realm or work that you live within as is not perceived as a solid mass, okay? Because remember I said to you it's interchangeable. It is constantly moving. It is constant in its change. And it is biological and actively functional with you. And so which means where there is life, there is a concentration of life, and that means it becomes a solidified aspect of matter for you. And these are also perceptions. And so we move to the next part of this material where I want to explain to you about natural laws and its dynamics, and kinesis, which is movement of energy. So Aristotle intended to establish general principles of change that govern all natural bodies, both living and inanimate, celestial and terrestrial, including all motions. That means change with respect to place, quantitative change, which means change with respect to size or number, qualitative change, and substantial change, which is coming to be or the coming into existence or generation or creation, intention, or passing away, deterioration and death, no longer existing, or corruption of whatever there was. So the body does tend to look weird after it's passed away. So that is the corruption. You have to look at this in an alchemical form as well. And so the key concepts of Aristotle's physics include the structure of the cosmos into concentric circles or spheres, with the earth at the center and celestial spheres around it, which is as you saw in the image before. And so what do we need to understand here? Aside from the fact that I think I've blown your hair away, is that magical thinking and the powers that they use, and to be able to understand how to counter it, every mechanism in this realm that you are aware of has been used by way of the Kabbalah or switchboard that is linked to controlling the realm or contributing to influencing the realm and its diabolical systems of laws overlaid, placed over, hooked in, stitched into through cults, rituals, Scientologists, etc., etc., etc. If you understand the model, you'll understand how to manipulate it. That's basically how it works. They have an understanding of the model. I'm telling you, this is how they understand the model. Okay. So all things are internal in thoughts, in the spirit, in the mind, and to think it, to reason it, and to understand it. And we need to be mindful of the following law of magic, which is what they use, and I've noticed it a lot in their books. And I've gone through this stuff, so you don't have to go through that. And spellcraft as a whole uses certain laws to allow for practices to take place. So it doesn't mean it's acceptable. They even admit it. It doesn't mean it's moralistic either. It only means that if you practice in one way, then another thing would essentially follow that practice. Cause and effect. The following thing that we need to understand very clearly is the law of knowledge, and it's the most basic of all the laws. It states that understanding brings control. That the more you learn, the stronger you become. And that the key phrase for this law should be or is, knowledge is power, and the sub-law is the law of self-knowledge. And the key phrase would be know thyself. And all other laws depend on these two. They work according to laws. Magicians and sorcerers work according to these laws. The real ones, not the fake ones. There's a lot of fake ones. Always remember that a thought, no matter the frequency, is always in flux or change or charge magnetically and electrically within you. Intentionality directs the influence to charge the energy for the thing to happen. Which takes us to the next thing. Mind control and mind games. Same thing. However, there's a game related to mind control. Life inside of the Tor requires for survival and ultimate escape a series of rules to get through, to understand, to basically get yourself fit. Okay. And every god that came into being in the cradles of the mind of man denoted new rules to play the same game of power, but the basics still remain. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be highlighting to you the mind game, okay, and its rules, and it's very simple. It's just a matter of understanding how it is being played all the time. Its rules and how it fits in the realms and of itself is very important to understand. So it took a while for me to get it all together for you. So the most important factor to consider is that the entire humanity in itself as a collective and non-living has been supplanted by an idealistic program, and this program forms part of the game, the mind game. Okay. And just because I'm showing you a checkerboard doesn't mean that that's how the game looks. It's not physical. Okay, you need to look at this as high magical information, because that's what they present it to be. Okay, so the rules are no one knows about the rules. Number one, rule of Fight Club, never admit you're in Fight Club. It's the same thing. I mean, if you look at that, I think you'll kind of get that whole thing, that movie, that whole adage. And those who know the rules can use them, while those that do not know the rules will never know. And those who know the rules can also break them in a particular way. So in simple terms, you get 4 types of players. You get givers, takers, controllers, and destroyers. Everyone in this realm plays at least 1 or 2 of these things, whether they're aware of it or not. And Even all of these at the different times of your life, however you may, like I said, not be aware of it, the system is influenced by this form of mind game, by either givers, takers, controllers, or destroyers. And so each one can destroy the other one or influence the other one. Think deeper here. So I can give you some examples here, and I'm gonna just leave it there. So the simple example is, if I want to control you, then I will take from you something and give it to another, so that another one will destroy itself. In religion, you get the same operation, or in a cult. So I give to you a belief system for you to want to give your soul obedience to it. What do I take? The goal is power out of your self-destruction and control. In that entire sentence, I've used all of those parts that they play in. And that is, understand that, and you understand how their game works. And so what I want to bring to you is to understand the following. Why is this important to know? The mind game is designed for the ones who are in control of the realm. If you must know its origins, it's really pre-Islamic Persian descent, but then it's been mixed up with magical shit. It's a form of chess that was played. And the way to play them at their own mind game requires for you to learn to recognize what is a taker, giver, controller, or destroyer. But it also requires for you to think in a different way, to recognize these things. And so you need to start working on changing your thinking. So how do you think? Well, you first learn to recognize how to see things in hyperreality, which is the fourth aspect. And because without this ability you are unable to see the bigger picture, and not seeing the bigger picture leaves you at a disadvantage. And so the hyperreality is only the beginning part. What is hyperreality? Hyperreality is what is perceived and experienced during hyperfocus of light from within and without of reality. When you squeeze your eyes real tight, you should be able to see some light flickering inside of your head. That's a start. And so when you look at me through your device, you see me in the fourth reality, because it is from your perspective. Because where you are is your full three-dimensional reality, which you are already part of. Thinking in another reality, and so on. Think about that one. Where comes the light from? Because we now know that there's more than one source of light. There is a light that comes from within you, and it interacts with the light that is coming at you. And you can get different types of light. We also know that some light can be reflections as well. And I'll explain that a little bit later. And so from within you, the ability to recognize your spirit, the ability to recognize your soul, and the ability to have wisdom, compassion, and the ability to feel the presence of the original one. Light creates light. Different types of light create different types of experiences. Keep that in mind. And beware of worshipping light's reflections. Keep that in mind. So how do you know if you have the connection? By recognizing the following principles within you. That you are here. And that you are not blinded anymore. And that you are no more the projection of the demiurge, the half-god of blind faiths and beliefs. And that you are able to see now. You are no more blind. You are feeling the fire of life-giving spirit within you. And you are here on this channel, so I am acknowledging you. Knowing the difference between, actually, the following aspect is it's very important to understand, is about understanding what demons are. Okay, because I'm hearing the word demons flung all over the place, and the most important thing is you need to understand what a demon actually is. So learn to recognize that there are living demons, non-living demons, and that some people who have passed on have given themselves over to subjected beliefs while they were alive, and have worshipped the material realm, and have never been able to connect with wisdom. Worship reflections of the shadow of light automatically makes them become demonic in a non-living space. Okay, I'm not talking about the innocent people. I'm not talking about ignorant people. I'm speaking about people that intentionally have worshipped things of the material realm because they don't want to let go of it, and hates what is light and what is a reminder of logos or order. Demons are pawns or collateral fodder, sadly to say, but I'm going to say it as it is, and can be used and manipulated by extremely adept controllers or sorcerers or magicians and any number of sorcerers in this realm. The best example of control over the Taurus is to get back and revisit the Lord of the Rings. You'll get a better understanding. So the brief synopsis of it is the film follows the hobbit Frodo as he and the Fellowship embark on a quest to destroy the One Ring, which is the Taurus, to ensure the destruction of its maker, the Dark Lord Sauron. The ring is the Taurus, as I've said. They discovered that they are being tracked by Gollum. What is a golem? A golem is a soulless entity. It is a made out of clay thing that is programmed to function. And on its forehead, that name is written in the clay. It is a former bearer of the One Ring, so is the belief. Capturing Gollum, Frodo takes pity and allows him to guide them, reminding Sam, who is with him, that they will need Gollum's help to infiltrate more doors to go through. Coincidentally, the light pattern in the drawing that crosses the center of the Taurus is the Saturn sigil as well. Just thought I need to bring that in for you. Which means those who put it there are afraid of death. They're also worshipping the Saturnalian cults, which is based on the breaking or the skewering of light so that it is eternal and can never go forward to the next. And sadly, David Icke blasted the Saturn death cult, but he missed the target. It's all happening right here and inside of the realm, inside of the minds and inside of the minds of men and women. So now the next question is, why was this permitted? What makes you think it was permitted? It is not permitted, but it is part of their rule to their game because there's so many of them. So you're looking at more of them versus you. Remember how many orcs there were in that movie. I wasn't an avid watcher of that movie. I'm just giving you an example. Look at the trailers and you'll see what I mean. So becoming subjected to the realm and its many material beliefs. It could be anything that you are fixated on or hypnotized by that puts you in a subjected belief state. Some people are fixated on pain. Others are fixated on the hero program. I think you get the idea. And there are precisely 12 archetypal beliefs and only permitted 12 dimensions in this Taurus. It is so. Each dimension is a layer upon the previous dimension. So if you think you see more than 12, it really is just a folding upon itself that makes it look like there's more. The experiences of the layers upon the previous one, think of the realm as a layered cake inside of the giant moving rotating Taurus in an egg. Okay. And so the top is open and the bottom is open. Just like you as a human being. You have open here and you have open down there. Outside is the thin layer of luminiferous ether, which is stormy, windy and harsh winds. Okay, forces of the movement of that thing that you feel when you try to go through. Okay, and outside of that is the void or freedom, the ether. Okay. Therefore, there are 12 faces of the beast or the clock or the way in which the light penetrates this Taurus. Why is there only 12? Because that is how the program was created, with 12. All of these are thoughts locked in or beliefs locked into. I don't know who created the Taurus. I'm still trying to figure that one out. It's possible to be in the existence and to know the rules, and still you'd be able to jump through all the squares and use the game on them, and you'll be able to go through it. This is your life. You can't have a mutiny in the jail cells unless you are in the right frame of mind and have studied the plan. That's how it works. So use some logic here, okay? Humanity generally tends to subject themselves to the squares itself, sadly. Therefore, your square is also squaring your compass, which is your internal direction. And you forfeit your freedom for something else, something that distracts you or draws you into life. So tons of influencers and snake charmers line up to key into those beliefs and project it into the system because that's what they want. And so taking someone else's work and then plagiarizing it so that they can get the feed from the crowd is demonic indeed. And so I'm onto you, to those that are doing this. There are also exactly 12 astrological sigils in the realm, and each one can be interchanged also, but predominantly it can be used to control you. And let me just add this. If you do take some of my work, give me credit for it. The most important way to experience the realm as it is within its current state is to learn to adapt wisdom and intelligence, love, gnosis, and the focus on metaphysics. I'm not trying to solve metaphysics. I'm telling you, this is the only way you'll be able to understand where you are. It's not a new sort of way that you need a guru-style study. It's just a way of thinking. Strikingly, it's also the most hated and misunderstood form of wisdom, as you can see. Since it absolutely devastates demons because they just really cannot get a feed on it then. There is nothing as bad as challenging demons in living and non-living, especially when you know the rules of the game, as well as the plan, which they don't know. And so what do we know about the human perspective relating to the understanding of the plan is that the general human perspective of anything is based on subjectivity, which creates perceptions. Perceptions are based on what you perceive from something without really questioning it or understanding it. You don't ask and you won't understand. You'll just draw your own conclusions and you'll plod onto that path. This fine thread is part of how mind control also happens. However, they know that you're smart, so they will color the beliefs in for you. They will script for you things to follow. They'll give you ideas to believe in. They'll give you luminosity and reflections of light. But all of it is just on the surface. And because you can't sit still, you're a curious person, so you'll need to be kept busy. So that is another thing that's given to you, to keep you eternally busy, working forever, routine jobs, and you'll just never ever really get there. You know? Things need to be created for you to believe in. And those would be expert content creators that lead you down all kinds of lumo-colored rabbit holes, snake holes, UFOs that peak over time. There is just some political upheaval, and so it goes on and on. Subjectivity is also perception that is impressed upon consciousness and subconsciousness. And so when you believe without questioning becomes a belief system in itself that later locks you and locks your soul in place through rituals and created believed perceptions. Therefore, the general consensus of human perspective is that humanity observes and draws their own conclusions of what has been observed. There is also a mode of observation which is perception based, as I've just explained. But you didn't know that every person in this realm has a projected ideal of what they expect to happen, because everyone seems to sit and wait for something to happen. End of the world scenarios or whatever, you know, because deep down there's a little morbid fascination with what if this happens, what then? And so it cycles around and around in your head, and if you feel it with a lot of heart and palpitations and fear, Therefore, voila, you've created your own end game, end times. And it sucked you into, because you didn't think of it before the time. You allowed yourself to run along with the herd. Thankfully, not every random little fixation of an idea actually happens, because there are more of us that contest these things, since it's really spurred on by rigorous beliefs and total surrender to the idea itself, or thought reformation. But the most important factor to consider is that know how creative thinking or repetitive loop thinking actually influences the realm for things to happen, since we are already in a cycle. And any emotion, fear of love, excitement, stress, mostly stress, does charge the image. And so can intentions alter perceptions? Yes, of course it can. Intentions alter perceptions all the time, but requires observation and agreement to it. So if you feel like you're being put into a belief system that is against your will, you can revoke that ability for that process to happen. And I've spoken about that as well. If you don't know where it is, go to my video called Fire Walk With Me and listen to that. That will help. So don't give consent to things that are making you feel subjected to a specific scenario. Agreement in this context means that if they all say there are flying pigs today, and you look out and you think, where are the flying pigs? Are you and you have already subjected yourself to that belief. The moment you decide that you're going to check to see if there's flying pigs, because they said there are flying pigs. What happens if they are really flying pigs? Then you operate in the next step of altering its influence on you. So you see the flying pigs, but you revoke the contract of agreeing for it to subject you as well. Okay, and so, but if you know that flying pigs operate in a specific energy form or pattern, then it is possible to be at least one step ahead. And so I am trying to show you how to be ahead of the flying pigs, or the manufacturing of flying pigs, at any given point in time of your existence while you are here. That takes us to the next thing. What are perceptions? Don't forget that perceptions perpetuate beliefs, worship, ideologies, faiths, religions, illusions of the realm dynamics which make up the realm. I think there are more narcissists born by the day, but I think it's because of the vanity of the self. The metaphysical explanation of what demons are becomes a little bit more apparent now. Everyone worshipping themselves, so where does the creativity flow? Into the eyes of the beholder. And it becomes trapped in its own reflection, like Medusa, who was shown a mirror of herself and she turned herself into stone. Much like how demons come to be, and the one that said, "Oh, my precious." Speaking of my precious, this realm in its form, in its most coveted ring or thing, there is such a manufacturing of power and drive to try to control the ring. They've made movies of it, tons and tons. Yet it can't really be controlled. The real control comes from influences, beliefs, physical and mental conditions, illnesses, born underdeveloped, born in injury, hurt, abuse, diseased, being burnt at the stake, and the shit list goes on. The realm and its creation was once incorruptible. Remember that. Once upon a time, long time ago, the premise of this was understood as ontological. Understand that word. Ontology means, in metaphysics, is the philosophical study of being. It investigates what types of entities exist, how they are grouped into categories, and how they are related to one another in the most fundamental level. And this is exactly what this work is all about. And always remember that the first creation was ontologically inseparable and also an open reality, which means when you died, you could actually leave. You can't now. Now it's like rinse, cycle, and repeat reincarnations over and over and over with your mind scrubbed, so you'll never remember anything. And by the time you do, you probably is you probably would be too old or not in the state of actually finding the way out. It's deliberately set up that way. But remember what I told you. It's not the actual ring itself, but it's the manipulation of what the ring can do. That is how Sauron was able to control what he did. Reference to the Lord of the Rings. Okay. I am actually going to watch it just so I can see. Maybe, maybe not. We'll see. And so always remember that the first creation was ontologically inseparable, like I've said, which means it was an open reality. Remember that too. Remember who you are. With the above premise, it's also important to know and understand what evil is. I think this is important for us to understand. Evil existed as a type of negation of a certain type of being. Evil is a condition much like cold. The effects of cold are real. However, evil exists as a reality through an intangible effect in a tangible world, using the ring for its power. Which means evil can be destroyed or affected. I hope you actually read between the lines here. Evil is a perfect nothing. Those who align their wills towards nothing migrate towards oblivion of non-existence. That was a quote. Evil is in existence a self-emulating reflection focused on light, worships its own reflection while basking in your shadow, because seriously, if it had to face your light, it would fizzle away. So evil in impulse is an impulse of a consuming nothingness, destroying what is believed to be valuable to you, reducing the elemental function of material to non-existence. Now you know why they fight so hard to live here and stay here, because that's where they can perpetuate their evilness. And so to be in conflict, in error with the original understanding or the ontological understanding of creation itself is to associate corruption with the author of the first creation. And this is how they operate. So evil is attacking the idea, well, demons attack the reflection of the idea, basically focused on the mirror versions of shadows or darkness. And this darkness must not be understood with the primordial dark infinite potential, which is not black, not devoid of light, and not made up of rainbow colors, like some erroneously try to explain. It's called the void. The reason religions are attacked, or at least Christianity, is because of the belief of the existence of a creator of order and of beauty. And so what they do, and they make it their life's mission, is something that's called misotheism, which means the hatred of God or gods. Or simpler example, hatred of an artist, so they destroy his art, because they're too cowardly to destroy the artist themselves. And so how did this world become a fallen realm? Because it is in a fallen state, as we speak. There is some catastrophic collapse in almost every century. There is a fall, and every age falls before the next one. And the Iron Age falls before the Bronze Age falls, and so it goes on. And the Renaissance revolutions ad nausea. A cosmological divorce is where man is left to autonomy of nature, yet not. So that's the continuous drive, because of all of these ages that fall for man to become a god. Man wants to eventually develop to become a god. That's how they think, okay? You have to bring in that this has been the quest for the Ministry of Magic and its elites, and this is why the elites are invoking as much darkness from what they perceive as the beyond and evil, so that man, as a perceived creation of God, must be destroyed. And so the Orion race, this is the most important part, is that the Orion race that had attacked the first world, or the one before this one, their intention was to terraform it. It's more terraforming as we speak, by essentially having man take themselves out. And so the race that had come to the original world and sought to take it over had to adapt when the world was placed under lockdown. I don't know who created the ring, like I said. What happened though is that the original world had come to a demise as well, and its original fragments of existence are scattered all around the Kuiper belt, which is on the outside of this ring, actually, this Taurus. But the original template was restored again. Remember what I told you about eidetic images, where something that had stood there for some time that had been taken away is still standing there, and you can see it depending on how sensitive you are. I can see those things. So when the original template was restored, so were all the other aspects and artifacts that came from the previous world. This is why there's some people that can see mud fossils where they are versus some people that don't actually see it anywhere. It depends on where you've lived and in what time you've lived. And so the reset program is a narrative on a loop, because it's always resetting itself through catastrophe or catastrophic ideas and elements, like the nuclear bomb is likened to a messiah because it destroys humanity and reverts it all the way back to their reflection of light. Darwin distorted the logical understanding of life and how it was presented through genetics, which we now get as eugenics. So the UFO deception characterized by covert operations, that serves multiple functions for example, the elites and those that work covertly with people in the traffic department, and the tampering of secret technology, advancement of social engineering, and reconfiguring of civilizations on constant change, rituals done to open portals, such as in the case of L. Ron Hubbard and Jack Parsons using Aleister Crowley's Babylon workings. And they tried to open the portal, but what they actually opened up was one of the doorways of the Kabbalah itself. And so you would need to investigate a little bit more. The Kabbalah is really like a trellis that surrounds the system overlay. It's like slotted over it. It's like a net. And so the parasites are truly inside of the dead tree. The counter-initiation, yet another agent of the same narrative aptly described, which I took from the writing of Charles Upton's book, The Counter-Initiation. The counter-initiation has 6 main features: syncretism, inverted hierarchy, deviated esotericism, the granting of the temporal transmission of spiritual lore proceeding over the vertical descent of revelations, the reduction of religion to utilitarianism or magic, and esotericism to a purely technical knowledge, which is the misapplication of the norms of the individual spiritual path to the supposed spiritual evolution of the collection. The counter-initiative is the ego's idea of spirituality. That's where they're driving this towards. And so he aptly writes, it appears in the Old Testament as the serpent in the garden, in Cain's murder of Abel, as the sons of God who looked upon the daughters of men and found them fair, in the Tower of Babel, and in the degeneration of Sodom, and in the magicians of Pharaoh whom Moses defeated. And in the New Testament it is personified by Judas, and in the Quran by the figure of as Samiri, who forged the golden calf, and the angels Harut and Marut, testers of man by God's design, who taught magic in the human race in Babylon. For both traditions it is destined to culminate in Antichrist. End quote. So that leads us to the next discussion here about demons, angels, and ETs. All of them all mixed in one pot. So they're all lumped together because of the depending of from which the angle is that you're looking at. But from a metaphysical perspective, I'm wanting to say that they're essentially intra-terrestrial elementals and disincarnated spirits, living and non-living. And at any given time, the luminiferous light that hit the tiles that permeate the frequency of what it is within you forms an angle. Hence the belief of calling light beings angels, because they naturally think that that's what it is. If it's in the form of light, it's a reflection. Okay, very important to understand. Not all that glitter is gold. The word demon means more or less supernatural, malevolent entities in living and discarnated forms. They are highly intelligent but possess no wisdom at all. And I think you're starting to see the picture that we've got a toad pond. All kinds of thingies come to that pond and stay there. There is not one thing that has not been patented and patterned and formed and shaped and numbered and named and sigilized and symbolized. Humans have numbers, letters, words, sigils, symbols, images, and patterns are attributed to every single thing in this material realm. The light and the dark in itself. And New Agers attribute ether with space, and that it's a condensed form of all light, which is number worshippers consider space as particles and atoms, and demons want to destroy the sound of music by hitting the speaker all the time. They think that the speaker is the generator of the music. The realm, for its complexities and its appearances to the observer, must be explained using a magnetic drawing board, as I've said before, and I'll bring it to your attention again. While the input is with intention electrical, so is that which is used in your thoughts electrical. When you draw the line, it is an electrical impulse. When you draw a statement, when you make a comment, it is an electrical impulse that connects with the frequency around you. Can this be manipulated? Yes, it can. Depends on how strong your willpower is if it's not being manipulated. It is possible for you to be able to counter that. You can. You have some choices and you have some free will, but it's not how you think it is. So is it done by you? Are these things done by the intentions or influences from others? Then that is why you would need to understand how to think in a metaphysical manner, because then you'll be able to see how things work. So without running after unicorns and chasing butterflies, actions, thoughts applied in the form that is placed on the board is either magnetized by you or by the realm itself. So you will experience a tug of war, literally. This tug of war is relative to belief systems of mythology, religions, and archetypes, egregores. As long as you are mindful of what you are as a spirited being and that you generate an amount of energy that can be working through frequencies, these energy frequencies consisting out of many energetic layers, some dense, some less dense, but all interconnected, intraconnected, interconnected, and some outer layers are thinner or more fragile. Some are dense, while other energy layers wrap around the material or physical body, but are not independent from the internal energy of frequencies inside of you. And the importance of a form determines the relationship of the mind to a form, a conscious idea related to it, which means that what is presented in this realm is based on the focus of how much energy form relates to you. So there you have it. I've presented to you as much information as I was able to present about almost everything that you are existing within. As long as you keep the information close at hand, you should be able to find your way eventually out of here. Explore and investigate the material on this channel. Just because the material is old does not mean that the information is old. All the information essentially is timeless on my channel. I just look a little bit different every now and then. So I'm leaving this with you. Take care, and we'll talk again.